to Uxbridge Beat, the podcast where we feature the who's who of Uxbridge, Ontario. My name is Scott Campsell.
And I'm Jennifer Nephew-Campsell, and I couldn't be happier about an episode than I am about this one. Amy Peck chats with us today.
Amy is the music teacher who is rocking the walls of the high school with her incredible positive energy.
Not only is she an excellent musician, she's also an extremely inspirational teacher who is constantly striving to be the best she can be for her students.
Uxbridge has a rich artistic community, and having had formidable teachers in her life like Ed Watson, Rory Snyder-McGrath, and the late Colin Marsh, she is working hard to continue the legacy of music and teaching excellence in our community.
Uxbridge Secondary School is so blessed to have Amy Peck as their music teacher, and we are equally as blessed to have been able to have her share her time with us for today's episode. Thank you for joining us. We're so excited you're here. I'm very excited you're here.
All of a sudden you hit like a music thing. All of a sudden, well, the music teacher's here, so we better sing.
I'm really excited you're here. We talked about you in an outro in one of our past episodes, and not only do I think you're an incredible human being, but you're an amazing teacher. I ramped you up that you could teach, what was it, underwater fire prevention and make it interesting. So,
well, I don't know about that, Jen.
I'm excited to find out if you could, though. But before we get into all the teaching stuff, let's talk about you and let's talk about Uxbridge. So you were born and raised here?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, I'm an Uxbridgean for sure. I wasn't born here, but shortly thereafter, my parents moved here, and I grew up for my first little bit of time on Cemetery Road, actually. Yeah, I've been here my whole life.
Did you go to Joseph Gould Public School or Uxbridge?
Yeah, so I went to nursery school. Then that's where I met Scott. And then I went to Uxbridge Public School because back then Uxbridge Public School went from kindergarten to grade 6, and then you went to Joseph Gould for grade 7, 8. So It was like a true middle school experience. So then I went to Joseph Gould and then to the high school. Being in Uxbridge, I think we all grow up and think, oh man, we live in this town and we got to get out of this town. And I think everybody sort of has their journey outside of town. And I certainly did as well. And then you just sort of realize how special a place it is. And you just want to come back and you try and figure out a way to get back here. So I did.
And I have to point out that your dad is the beloved Tony Peck, who owned the Shell station for a long time, right? And so just tell us a little bit about your mom and your dad.
Well, I think I hit the jackpot. I mean, I know I hit the jackpot in terms of family. I'm so incredibly proud of all of them. And I really believe that the sense of community and things that I carry with me in my teaching have been so rooted in their giving to the community and sense of community and trying to help others. My dad owned the Shell station in town for, I think it was 50 years. Don't quote me on that, but it was a long, long time. And in that time, he went to a fire college and then worked up the volunteer fire to becoming a chief. And at that time, it wasn't a full-time position. The town wasn't big enough to support that. So he would work at the Shell station, and then I don't know, you guys would remember the fire siren that would go off. And so he would run down and fight fires and then be at the fire department at night to sort of do all of the things. But I admire him so much. He's sort of our rock. And my mom was a music teacher actually at Goodwood Public School. She took a big hiatus when she was raising us, but then went back. And actually when I got to Uxbridge Secondary School, so many people would say, oh, are you Mrs. Peck? I've heard so much about you. And it was like, no, that's my mom.
That's the other one.
That's my mom.
The encore.
Yeah. And then my brother is sort of resituated in Kingston, and he's heavily involved in the military and a veteran, and I have so much admiration for him and pride. And the same with my sister, who's now running her own business with her husband, Rustnell Auto Repair, and they're doing great things for the community. So yeah, I'm super proud of them. I burst at the seams when I talk about my family. So.
I'm really glad I asked about your mom and your dad because I didn't know your mom was a music teacher. And I feel a little embarrassed that I didn't know that.
Well, that's my mom, though. She sort of keeps everything. She just kind of does her thing and makes remarkable things happen, and you don't really hear about it, except for other people will say these glowing reports about her, and then I say, Mom, you changed this kid's life, and anyway, so it's...
And I have to say, your mom gives the best hugs ever. She does.
She's pretty great. Yeah, it's a skill, for sure.
Did she get you started on your musical journey as a child?
She definitely encouraged it. She was funny because she would always say, I want all of my kids kids to do something arts related and something sports related. And unfortunately, I was a bit of a disappointment because no matter what sports related activity she put me in, it was like, well, I mean, she's doing okay. You might want to get some extra help for her in whatever it was, whether it was swimming or soccer. She even signed me up for baton twirling. She thought, oh, that's maybe a little more artistic. Maybe she'll take. So I didn't fulfill maybe her hopes and dreams in any sport related activity. However, she did really support the arts. Like, one of the things that I think is just so remarkable about the town is just all of the mentors, you being two of them in the town. There's so much mentorship that goes on here, and the sense of community outreach and help for each other. And I think that ultimately was the drawback for me to the community. But I started my musical journey with Colin Marsh, who just recently passed away.
That's right, yeah.
And Colin, God rest his soul, I don't know how he did it, but he ran his music studio, but his band or extracurricular thing that he did was the mini beats. And as a 5-year-old, he taught me how to play the recorder. And about 25 of us, like, all playing the recorder, accordion players, bass, drums, piano, like different combinations, different sizes of recorders to get different harmonies and stuff. And he'd write tunes for us and arrangements of tunes. And so this was a band that he would work with. I was in it until I think finished UPS, so till I was 12. And he did amazing things, and I have so much respect for him. And he really was the one who taught us about just the special quality of community through music that sometimes you don't get when you're a kid. You take a piano lesson or something and you don't get to be, in some cases, with a group of people to feel what it's like to make music together. So that's where I met people like Leisha Van Nieuwenhove, and there's a whole crew of us that kind of went through that program. And I think that's really what got me started. And little did I know that the recorder, the fingerings on the recorder are very similar to the clarinet and the flute and the saxophone. So when I ended up choosing my instrument in grade 7, it was like, what? Oh my, I already know where B, A, and G are. So it was just it really gave me a leg up.
He'd make everybody feel special. And everybody's so unique. And when I guess it was his daughter that put out the social media post about him passing away. And so that got shared all over Uxbridge from people that knew him. And I remember I'd go for my piano lesson and he'd come out and he'd say, Maestro, and he'd get all excited and everything. So I thought this was my nickname. I thought every time I show up, this was Maestro. And then you start reading through the comments and go, I remember he used to call me Maestro. And I felt so cheated. I was like, this other guy was like, who are you?
It's my name.
I thought it was my name, yeah.
That's amazing. Well, what a story I have, because he was an Englishman, like he had an English accent. And he taught, the notes. So this is the whole note, and this is the half note, the quarter note, whatever. So, and this was my first experience reading notation. So he called them the whole note and the half note. So I, for a long time, thought it was a half note, like H-O-F-F instead of half note. So yeah, it was like, oh, it's 2 half notes until finally.
At least he didn't say quavers and demi-quavers.
He didn't. No, he didn't.
That would have been maybe a generation before him. Why did you ultimately choose saxophone?
That involves another mentor, actually. So in grade 5, so I think going back, one of the things that I think was such a great thing is Aunt Sulev at the high school, so the high school music teacher back in the day, when he would run a music concert, like a spring concert or a holiday concert or whatever, it wouldn't just be his band. He would invite the mini beats to play, and he would invite John Wilson's grade 6 choir to sing, and he would invite all these people. So at a very young age, holding my recorder, the high school band always used to wear these big bananas, like they really honestly looked like banana suits, these tapered yellow and black suits. And there was so much pride associated with them, like in honesty. So you would just look at this very formal band and they'd be playing these big boombastic pieces, and I just thought, I just want to do that. And so Aunt Sulev used to run a program where he would get high school kids to come into the public schools and do private lessons for cheap or free, I can't remember. So Ed Watson was my first teacher, and he taught me clarinet. And I loved that, so I got a bit of a head start in grade 5. And then in grade 7, probably the reason I am a music teacher today, Rory Snyder McGrath, he was my grade 7-8 teacher. And when I got in, he was just like, oh, Peck, you gotta play some saxophone, try out for the jazz band. We're thinking about going to Vancouver for Music Fest. And he was the guy that every rehearsal was fun. We would all laugh our heads off, but there was this high standard and this expectation, and we all just wanted to make him proud. So we would just strive for it because we just loved him so much. He didn't put up with anything. He had to work hard, but just this, when he saw a smile on his face or when something went really well, he'd be the first to like jump for joy. And so I think I knew in grade 8, I need to do this, whether it's playing, teaching, all of it. He's the one who sort of just really put me on the path.
Your journey almost mirrors exactly mine, just in different schools with different teachers. And I had all of those same experiences at the elementary school level, the high school level, and ultimately the same thing. That's why I'm a music teacher, because of those people. So now you're that person. How exciting is that? So after high school, what did you do after that?
I feel like my life is always a series of crossroads, and I struggle with decisions. It's like something about and I think it's because I want so much to make the right decision, and sometimes there's not. So university happens, and I feel in my heart I want to go to McGill, so I apply and I get in. And my private teacher, who was Paul Brody, a classical saxophonist, was affiliated with York University. So I think he pulled some strings and got me a fairly substantial scholarship to go there. So I was feeling this, I want to go to McGill. It's going to cost more. It might be a bit of a risk. I've never really been that far away from home. And then York, it's close to home. I could still live in residence. My private teacher, who I cared about a lot. And so I was at this crossroads. So I ended up going to York. And then I ended up transferring later and going to McGill. So I kind of got to do it all, which was great. So I went to York University, and then my degree is from there, my first degree. And then I took a couple of years off to live with some musician friends, and we just did the musician thing, lived in a house together, and just tried to make a go of it, doing some private teaching and playing as much as we could. And then after that, my dad, who is sort of the practical person in the family, and he just said, Amy, you love teaching, you teach at music camps, and you always have stories about your students. Why don't you get your teacher's college certificate? Just get it, back pocket it, and then you can just, you're off to the races. Then I know that you've got this secure thing. So
how old were you at that point?
So I was, I guess 24, 25 was kind of my free years where I lived in the house in Toronto. And then when I was 26, I was like, okay, I'll do it. I'll go to teacher's college. So I applied, I got in at U of T, and I went there.
And that was a 2-year program at that point, right?
1 year.
Oh, 1 year.
So
okay.
Yeah, thank goodness. So it was only a 1 year in and out. So then the question came because, I'd been working at the Durham Music Camp and various things that sort of, I was in the Durham scene, I guess. And so O'Neill, which is the art school in the board, one of the teachers there who I worked with at the camps and things, there was a position that had opened up. So he was like, hey, so I know you're, finishing teacher's college. Would you like to do this long-term occasional position for, I think it was a maternity leave. And so then I was like, but I kind of want to go back to playing. I said I'd do this for my dad, and I'd back pocket it, and then I'd be on my way and so I thought, well, I can't pass this up. This is a great opportunity, and I'm really glad I did, because it was such a learning experience, and I got to work with some amazing teachers and just experience it for real. And then 3 years later, I was like, because I don't know if you feel this with teaching and playing, but there's this pendulum where I feel like when you're teaching a lot, you just feel this draw, you just want to play or sing. And then when you're singing, and it's just like, oh, but I do miss teaching. And that's my pendulum all the time, and I've yet to find the balance. So I ended up taking, I forget how I did it. I took a leave or something, and I went to Humber College just to play, because I just wanted to play and learn some stuff and do more jazz-related things. And then Uxbridge opened up. So I came and taught for a year, and then Donald A. Wilson opened up in Whitby, and that was a brand new program. And I lived in Toronto at the time, so the commute to Uxbridge was a little bit crazy. And so I thought, I need to try this. Opening a new school and ordering the instruments and helping design what an opportunity. I've got to at least put my hat in the ring. And wouldn't you know it, the principal who was opening the school was Lou Vavugios. And I don't know if you remember that name, but he was a teacher at Uxbridge Secondary School. So again, all of us Uxbridgians, the Uxbridge connections are everywhere. So I think that really kind of gave me a little bit of a leg up in the interview process, because he just had this, Uxbridge, and I remembered him and he remembered me. And so I was able to do that I
bet you it was fond. I remember you. You were a good student. You see, when teachers see me now, it's like, I remember you. Yeah. It's a little different.
Well, he was a phys ed teacher, and luckily I didn't take phys ed with him because maybe he would have had a different, he would have been like, right. Yeah.
Not the Peck that I wanted in my class.
Yeah. But what an experience. And I met some of my great teaching friends in that school, and I learned so much. But one of the big things that I just kept coming back to was, like at Wilson, there was no tradition. So it was like the school is opened, the doors, it's like shiny and new, and now it's up to us to build the tradition. And so kids would come in and like, music, guys, we're in music class. So like there was no kind of look at the legacy that's been built and now you get to be a part of it. It was like, wow, I'm really building this from nothing. And so lots of opportunity, but lots of challenge. It just made me really understand how much being in a community-minded school and a community like Uxbridge really mattered to me. Because as much as you'd work to build community within the school, I wasn't really attached to the community at large. So Whitby itself, I didn't really have any connection to. It really kind of informed, like, if Uxbridge opens up again, that's my dream. So I taught there, and then Brooklyn High School opened up, which was another new school. Our existing principal opened Brooklyn, and a lot of the Wilson staff went with him because he was great. And so I hopped on board that and thought, if Uxbridge doesn't come up, Brooklyn's a little bit closer. And then 3 years later, Heather McEwen, who was a great music teacher at Uxbridge prior to me, she let me know that I think this is the year I'm going to retire. And that's it. That's when the opportunity kind of presented itself, and I was able to come back. So
that's an interesting spin. You've got kids that are everywhere. They're going, I got to get out of this town. I got to get out of this town. You get out of this town. I got to get back. I got to get back. Wow.
I know it's a funny thing, but I think I just learned at some point. I mean, I love going on adventures. I lived in Colorado for a little bit of time because another one of the pendulum swings where I felt like I just need to do something other than teaching. So I went and did a degree down there, and that was great. But everything always kind of brings me back to this town. So yeah.
Common question we get at Okamikai Martial Arts and Fitness is, what age can my child start karate?
And the answer is that we have children as young as 3 years old training with us. Austin is one of our amazing students, and he told us some of his favorite things about our program.
Do lots of stuff like karate, like weight falls, kicks, and blocks, and punches. I can do anything.
Austin can do anything, and we are excited to help bring out his potential and your child's too.
We use martial arts as a tool to help your child build confidence, focus, self-discipline, and respect for others.
Contact us at Okamikai Martial Arts and Fitness to get your child started today.
Mom, wake up, it's karate day!
So you are educated as a saxophone player in both classical and jazz styles, yes?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about how those two connect, how they don't connect.
I think they connect a lot, and I think one really informs the other, and I'm really happy that I've been able to do some things in both. I tell my students that I always think of things in sort of a triangle. So you've got your craft, and then you've got your creativity, and then you've got your connection. And so if you can build the craft by doing as much music stuff as you can, and you can apply this to, I could think, anything in life, but if you're working on the skills that then allow you to be your most authentic self in creating, and whether it's composing, whether it's playing, teaching, whatever it is, and then you're building that community and connection at the bottom. And so as it expands, all of those things expand. Just the whole experience, you have this connected experience of all those things. So I am very happy that I had a very strict saxophone teacher who wouldn't let me get away with anything, and every little breath mark and everything had to be addressed in the classical realm. And then I was also able to take those skills that I developed and then sort of just take them, but also abandon them and work on improvisation and like, what do you feel, and chords and things that go along with that, but just ultimately learning things and then forgetting it so that you can just play what you're feeling in that moment and what you're hearing and responding to what else is going on in the band, like a sort of ongoing communication in the moment.
Do you think that reflects you as an artist and also as a teacher? Is there a point where you look at yourself and say, I'm a musician and I can use those skills to be a better teacher, and then I can take those teaching skills and sort of become a better musician, or are they two separate things?
I'm so happy for myself that I went through my degree and my training as a performer, because I think that just gave me that experience to then teach. I will say there's sometimes if a French horn player comes into the program, I'm looking up okay, what's that finger? Like I'll have to review certain instruments because I've focused on certain ones. Yeah, I have no regrets for just working on performance and how that does help me as a teacher, I think.
Do you think you're better at one than the other? You think you're a better teacher than a performer, or a better performer than a teacher?
I think that I feel more practiced as a teacher. So one thing that I struggle with is imposter syndrome. And it's a real thing where friends that I went to university with that are now incredible jazz players, classical players, whatever, and there might be a party and, hey, Amy, come, bring your horn. I will immediately feel heart palpitations. They've dedicated their whole lives to their craft, and I have gone a different route, and I'm not good enough to play. Like that is a real thing, and it is debilitating sometimes. And a lot of jazz is based on come to the jam session and we'll call a tune and you're on the bandstand and they'll say, do you know this song? And if you don't know it, you're like, oh, sorry, I don't know that. Well, what about this one? Oh no, I don't know that one either. And I'm someone who I like to prepare. If you talk to my students, there's lists and more lists when we're organizing a concert to make sure every detail has been sort of talked out and worked out. And so I think as a teacher, I've done it so much and spent so many hours that I feel like I'm in my element. I feel comfortable. I mean, I get nervous every year when the new batch of students comes in, but I love the challenge of okay, we are going to build community. How are we going to do it? Who are the personalities? What do they like? How can we get them excited about music? Oh, this kid is really into making beats. We're going to use that to whatever, just looking at who we have in the class and building on it. Anyway, I'm rambling. But
No, not at all. And the imposter syndrome is, again, Holy Crow mirrored my whole musical existence. And when Scott and I first started dating, he's been a longtime member of the Legion. He says, we're going to go to karaoke. And I said, this doesn't do karaoke. No. He's like, what do you mean? You're a singing teacher. You're singing. You sing. And I'm like, yes, I'm a classical singer. And I had put myself into this box of, when I perform, it is these things in a gown, therefore it is not those things. Mm-hmm. And it took, a few times of him dragging my butt out before, and he finally said, you're coming and you're bringing your business card. And I was like, oh. So I went and I sang and I did, I don't know, with some Frank Sinatra or something like that, and some jazz standard.
Yeah, I think before you drank a little bit, it was a Frank Sinatra song, and then it turned into Mambo number 5.
That should never ever be attempted by me ever again. But all that to say that it took me that moment to realize that I didn't have to be perfect, and I didn't have to be on stage in a gown and create this whole level of anxiety, that I could actually have fun with my craft.
Yes.
And so sure enough, doesn't a gentleman come up to me, oh, you're Jennifer Neveu. I've been waiting to meet you. I want singing lessons. This one's like,
Told you.
Well, I just so happen to have a business card right here. So I can really relate to that level of imposter syndrome, but also it's taken me as a musician a long time just to get to the point where music as a performer isn't work, and it's not scary and stressful, and you don't have to be perfect, and it's okay to be fun. So have you gotten there yet? Have you gotten to the point where it can just be fun?
Yes, and I think that is my life's work in progress. I haven't been able to get there in every situation so far. Another mentor that really meant a lot to me was when I was doing my master's at the University of Colorado, and Brad Good, who is a fantastic trumpet player, he recognized I just had stage fright. If there was a jam session, Peck would show up late or maybe sit in the back, and I think I approached him and asked him if he would teach me lessons. He's a trumpet player, but I wanted to do improvisation lessons with him, and he said, Amy, I will teach you for free. Come, we'll set up a lesson, but your homework is to come to the jam session every Monday night, and as soon as you stop coming, the lessons stop.
Oh.
And so he recognized it right away. And the first thing I felt was just this anxiety and I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can do it. And I had to just say like, what is this thing? And realized that it was just mental health and just like, come on, like I've worked on music my whole life. Like just, I am who I am and I'm at where I'm at and let's just do it. And slowly, and I'm not going to say I didn't have moments where I was like, oh gosh, and tunes would get called and I wouldn't know them, and he wouldn't acknowledge like, oh, you're here, that's great. He would just be like, yeah, good. Like, and what tune do you want to play, Peck? And he would call the tune and do it. And if I fell on my face, he'd be like, all right, what tune you want to do now? And it was really, really helpful. So in teaching, one of the very first things I do with my grade 9 classes is I give them an eraser. There's like dollar store great erasers, like all sorts of different colors and stuff. So I hand out erasers and I'm like, what is this? And I'm like, this is your reminder that you have to make mistakes and you have to fail. Like you have to just fall on your face. You've got to like squeak on your instrument. You've got to try and get that high note and it doesn't come out. And you know, you have to do it authentically. Don't just make a bad sound to make a bad sound. But I want you to strive, and making a mistake is part of the process. And a lot of why I think that's in my teaching is because it's me. It's what I needed back then, or what I value in music. I mean, music is all about just trying and failing and getting back up and doing it again and feeling that community around you and trusting the community around you.
Is that your idea to do the erasers? That was totally your idea?
I think I actually bought erasers because I saw them at the dollar store. Yeah, I guess it was my idea. Yeah.
Because that's, to me, when Jennifer mentioned the episode where we talk about you being a great teacher, that takes creativity. And that takes something where that's a life skill. That's not just, oh, this is going to be good for music class. This is a life skill. Yeah, you got to be able to put yourself out there. Yes, you got to be able to make mistakes. Mm-hmm. And I can't relate to you as a musician. I can relate to you as a teacher. You know, you keep on mentioning all these mentors and all these people that helped you and all these people that influenced you. And even right from the beginning, you're talking about your dad. You maybe it's because it's your dad. But I remember being in the middle of town, and to put things into perspective, when the volunteer fire department siren went. At one point, that was it. There was just the sirens, and people are running into their trucks and they're driving down to the fire hall. Then we got into the pagers. All of a sudden, the pagers go. Everybody takes off. And Tony's Superman. Tony goes from the Shell station, runs down the hill. I swear, if he had ripped his shirt open and had a big S underneath it, I wouldn't have been surprised. But that's a small town feel. Mrs. Holman out, directing traffic. So it's such a small town feel. And so there's a point where us now in our 50s are looking at this and going, oh, I remember this, and and these are things that characterized Uxbridge. And now you're telling me a story about where you come in and you go, these are your erasers, and I'm like, that's a life skill. Like, there's no way that a student is going to look back at that. Maybe not next year or the year after, but maybe 10 years from now and go, it's okay to make mistakes. And you know why? Because Miss Peck said it was okay to make mistakes. And I remember her doing that. Like, do you see that influence is there yet, or have you not really hit that realization yet?
There have been a few students, and it's been it's actually brought tears to my eyes, that will have come to a gig that I'm playing at or something and will pull out their eraser or say, I used this for my final exam at Western, and it's just like a little nub of so it's those, and that's what I tell the kids all the time. This is my dream job. I came from brand new facilities, brand new instruments, a wonderful staffs. And I mean, Uxbridge has an amazing staff, but like all these things on a wish list of like what you think you want. And then you realize that, you know what, I need that spirit that is in Uxbridge, without sounding too whatever, but it's true. There's a thing in Uxbridge that I haven't found anywhere else. Mm. And I love that I'm a part of just an outstanding lineage of music teachers that came before me that all influenced me in some way, every single one of them, and that I can be a part of that legacy. And when I talk to the kids about, I'll show them the old picture of the Santa Claus parade from 1981 or something, where they're all wearing the spats on and they're playing their whatever, right? Like, it was this is what happened 40 years ago, and you guys are shaping it. And so it's so much, I really feel strongly about, where do you want the program to go? Like, what do you want at the end of this year? I don't want to do a holiday concert and a spring concert because that's what we're expected to do. Do we want to do a holiday concert? Well, if we do one, how are we going to make it remarkable? And what is the thing that, like, so that we're not just doing it for our parents who feel, and guardians who feel obligated to come. We're doing it because we have something to say, and I want the kids to feel so much pride with what they were able to accomplish. And that comes from them. So if we want to compose our own piece, I'll be like, okay, we got to think about that, and I'll have to figure out how we're going to do it, but we're going to do it. And then they feel so excited about what it is they're presenting. And that for me it's magic. And because I see what you guys do, and it's unbelievable. And
then here comes March 2020, and it all shuts down.
Yeah.
How are you? Are you, like, truly, do you feel
It took us
like,
that long to get to that. How are you?
No, like, do you feel like you've re-fallen in love with teaching and with music again? It's taken me a while. Yeah.
I mean, in a way, I felt lucky that I could at least meet with the students online. And to be honest, it wasn't so much about, it was trying to facilitate a theory lesson, or like, kids were playing their trumpet test in a field because all of the Zoom meetings were going on in their house. And so, Miss Peck, I'm going to play the scale now. You just hear wind gusts. You can't hear a single note, but 10 out of 10, like, you gave it your all. Like,
You look passionate.
Yeah, that's right. But so often it was just such a good, for me to be able to just talk to the students and like, how are you doing? Like, how are you managing? And you turn off the meat, and it just felt, I think one of my teacher friends summed it up. It felt like twice the work and half the joy, like you'd get those little moments where we'd play a piece and the kids would be excited about it, or we'd talk about something and they'd get excited. And that's kind of all you could hope for, is that there'd be a little spark, or that, oh, you've all decided to turn your cameras on, we can see each other. But despite that, it was really hard. It was incredibly
So were you teaching
hard.
like band over Zoom? Mm-hmm. So how do you do that?
You don't.
Okay. All right. Well, okay.
So you can't play together because there's horrible feedback and delay. So that's not an option. So the way I would teach music is that I started by going to everybody's house and dropping off instruments. They had an instrument at their house. So they would get set up and they would turn their speakers off. And I would say, okay, on the Google Classroom, go to this song, and they would pull up the piece, and I would play the saxophone part or the clarinet part or the flute, whatever I had with me, and I would play my part, and I'd say, you play along with me. This is as close as band we're going to get. Yeah. So you're going to listen to me play, and then play your clarinet or trumpet part along with me. And that's as close as we could get to playing together. What we did do, and something that just came, like the little bit tidbits that come out of these weird times. I have a music council, so that's a leadership team. They apply for positions and they sort of help guide events and organize and stuff. So the leadership team was like, yeah, we have to have some concerts. I'm like, well, I really don't even know how to do that. How are we going to do that? And they were like, what if we had virtual open mic nights? So what it turned out to be is, and it actually was really great for some of those kids that maybe wouldn't get up and play live, but they pre-recorded their performances, sent them in. One of the music council students would curate, an order. We would all meet at a certain time. Welcome to the virtual open mic night. And the first person up is this person. And that person would be watching their performance on video along with everybody else, the 50 people that would be online. And then the comments would go. And it was like, I didn't know that you played piano or guitar, and your voice is so beautiful, angelic. Oh my gosh, it's so nice to hear music again. I love that song. It was just like, so many times I would have to turn the screen off and like wipe my eyes because I was just so touched with just the resilience. I mean, it was so hard for everybody for different reasons. And to be honest, at certain points, I was like, I guess I'll just show up for my classes. And then I guess that's what I do in this time. But the kids made it possible to do more because they were willing to try these things. And there were some magic, like the open mic nights, that sort of came from it.
Now you have full-time music this year. You have an expansion into another room, right?
Yep.
Okay, so tell us about the program coming up with no lockdowns, no changes.
So
where are you moving forward to?
I'm so excited. We're certainly aiming towards a band trip or a music department trip this year. I'll announce that at a later date, but there's so many keen students that are dying to play. And so the fact that we don't have to be distanced, I don't have to teach with a mask on, we're not trying to navigate all of the restrictions that were in place even when we were in the building. The kids used to walk down to the new part of the school, a new drama room, and so they'd have to walk down with their tubas like a long way every day to play. So they're just going to be able to set up in the main room. We're going to be able to play. And then we have a room that's just across the hall as a breakout space that we're going to use as a, like, sort of a composing room and like a singer-songwriter sort of vibe. And I just got a bunch of posters that came in so that we can do some, just kind of spice it up. So I'm just excited to just get it ready to roll, and then we're gonna do it.
I'm picturing the poor kid that's got to carry his tuba all the way down to the other end of the school. And then, all right, now blow into your instrument. Okay.
I know, it was really, and then we'd walk back, and then the next class would walk down. I mean, my step count was like pretty great, but that was the only real win there. But
rapid fire. She's gonna have a bunch of students listening to this. We gotta do rapid fire.
Okay, dogs or cats?
Dogs, but I like cats.
Our cat's right there. You don't want to insult them. Winter or summer?
Summer.
Woodwinds or brass?
Woodwinds.
Classical or jazz?
Jazz, yeah.
High school or elementary?
High school.
Beatles or Rolling Stones?
Beatles. Yes.
What's your most annoying thing? Biggest pet peeve?
Biggest pet peeve. This is a weird one. When I have groceries in bags on the backseat of my car, and then I turn and the groceries roll out onto the floor. I hate them. It happens all the time.
What's your...
It's a thing. And then you're like, the stuff and the eggs and you just, yeah.
What's your teaching pet peeve?
Teaching pet peeve.
I just said pet peeve. That was a good one.
It was a good one because now it's so visual and I can see it and I want to help her solve the problem. You know the cars, you can like hang the grocery bags over the back hooks and stuff, right?
But can you see? Yeah.
Bins. Maybe
I need some bins. You're right. I might need those. Yeah.
So as a teacher, what's your biggest pet peeve?
I forgot my music.
And you know darn well they didn't?
Or we're about to start the concert and Miss Peck, I don't have my mouthpiece, or I don't have my reed, or I don't have my
reed just broke.
Even though we do like make sure you have the dun 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 dun. So that would be a mild. And they know. Like if I have my performance face on, they just know like, okay, we're gonna solve this.
My students call that the Jennifer face.
Okay.
They don't like that one. What is the biggest musical disaster that's happened in a rehearsal or a performance at school?
Jazz festival. I had an excessive amount of saxophone players, so we were on a riser and they were all squished in. Student gets up to do a solo and sits back down, and the chair falls behind the riser, so he falls like this. So you see feet, and it's a festival, so we keep playing. And I look over and he's like, I'm okay. And he is sitting there and we're trying to somehow get through the rest of the tune after his solo. His solo was great, but it was the aftermath. That's one that comes to mind.
When you pass away, assuming that you go to heaven, God sees you, what would you expect God would say?
That I made a difference. That's what I would hope, that I made a difference. In even just one person's life would be great.
You don't think you've done that?
Teaching is just like it sometimes can be really hard, but it's filled with those moments where you feel like, okay, we're doing good things, right?
It's hard to live in the now. Like for me, when I started martial arts, my teacher at the time had a 6th degree black belt in karate. He knew a few weapons. He knew judo, a little bit of aikido, and I remember thinking, this guy's awesome. Like, look at all the things that he can do, and like how much he's dedicated his life to this thing. And now I'm sitting, I got a 6th degree black belt, I got a 2nd degree black belt aikido, I've got all these weapons I've done, but it's over time. We just didn't quit, and so then eventually, and I remember when you started sax, and you're like, oh, that's nice, she's playing the sax. And then you see what you've done with it. But it's sort of hard to, maybe it's like an age thing too, where it's like, I'm 50? Like, how did that happen?
I know, yeah.
How did that happen? Because I was only, 18 last week.
And some days you kind of still feel that way. Yeah. You still feel like...
Especially when all the students are taller than you are at the school, right?
I know. true. That's a real thing. The struggle is real.
Is it weird going through the high school now as a teacher?
It's cool. It's like there's people in my class. When I look at a class list, you know, I taught your son in careers, so you look at the class list, cancel. Oh my gosh, this is... so you see all of the...
Just because this is audio right now.
Yeah.
She's smiling when she says, "Oh, it's him."
Yeah, because it's him, not because it's yours.
No, that's right. Well, no, but
He's a good kid.
Oh man, yeah, he was great. He honestly was. Yeah, it's so cool. Just you walk through the hall where we took French or something. You think, oh, Miss McFarland. Like, just you have these little ghosts that appear kind of all over the place and when you least expect it. Mr. Sulev actually came to one of my first spring concert at the school.
Oh, cool.
We had done a commission for Miss McEwen because she retired and didn't have any pomp and circumstance. We're like, no, we're not letting that happen. So we had a concert band piece commissioned for her. So we played it, and I invited Mr. Sulev to come. And he did. And it was a funny situation because we'd put out 2 very soft kind of plush chairs for Heather and the composer. And Mr. Sulev came, and I didn't know for sure whether he would come, but he came and he was like, oh, it's so great to be here. It's so nice to be here. And then he sat in the comfy chairs. So then I was like, Dad, help! So my dad was running and finding more comfy chairs. Anyway, we got it dealt with, but it was so lovely to have him.
And so we loop back to the beginning, and Superman Tony Peck saves the day again. So we thought this podcast was going to be about you, but apparently your dad trumps all.
Yeah, he's a good one. He's a good one.
Thank you again for doing this. It was so nice to have you.
Thank you so much.
I see you at the gym, and we don't talk much because
that sounds good. I like that you say that. You see me at the gym. That sounds like
okay. Because you're so athletic.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. You just didn't find the sport you liked.
Weightlifting.
That's it.
Mrs. Peck, she needed to be in the weight room.
Lifting tubas.
Do you want me to message Barbara now? Let her know you found your footing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, inspirational teachers that you've had in your life, and go.
I'm going to start at my elementary school level, and I'll start with my band teacher who we began band in grade 4. His name was Vince Gassy, and he helped me just bring out the best in myself musically, but also helped some of the less musically inclined kids to find the best in themselves as well. He's still a friend, and actually when I went to the Uxbridge Secondary School concert this past spring, he had a piece on Amy's list as a composer, so that was neat to see that turnaround. It's always less than 6 degrees of separation of music. Grade 7, I had an excellent teacher, but oh my gosh, Miss Martin, she was just tons of fun. And grade 8, Mr. Wilson. But then going into high school, that was where I really found myself musically. And Lee Willingham, by far, and Amy makes reference to him in the episode, is one of the most incredible mentors that I still have to this day. He's now a professor at Laurier University. Miles Crawford, Steve Buck, oh my gosh, all these guys who just let us be who we truly were as these music nerds, and let us have this whole life down in the music department. They would get up at stupid o'clock in the morning to take us down to breakfast television to play a gig first thing in the morning. They would pack us in a car and take us to music festivals halfway across the province or whatever. They did so much for their students because they were so incredibly passionate about what their craft was as teachers. And all of those kids who I had those experiences with as teenagers, we're still all connected today because it was so pivotal for us. And I think Amy really does that for her kids. She really brings out that kind of community and that sense of spirit. So what about you?
I've got a long list of teachers that I can say, wow, this person really made an impact. Like I think of Rick Sassville, who taught me in grade 5, and I thought he was a great teacher. But other than the water table, I don't remember exactly what he taught me. Mike Arthur's OAC drama, the one and only grade 13 OAC drama course that ever got taught at USS. What did he teach me? I just know I had a lot of fun in his class. That's what's important.
And you know what? You bring up a good point there, because it's not even these are the life lessons and these are the skills and these are the functions or techniques, but they created for you as a student an experience. And that's what you remembered.
But somebody like Bruce Brandon, who was the board head for the English department at USS. That guy, I can name things where he said this or he said that, and I've still applied some of that knowledge. And at the time I was in his class, I remember it wasn't my favorite class to go to. I liked English, but it wasn't my favorite class. And it was later where I just remember one point in particular in my life with him, and he said something about that I wasn't good at deadlines. And so ever since he said that, when I have to hit a deadline, I just remember Bruce called me out on that. And so I try to do what I can to stick to deadlines. But he was the motivating factor as to why I realized, nope, I do have a weakness in that area.
Did you think that was a challenge? Like that he had kind of thrown the gauntlet down and said, you can't do that, or you're bad at that, therefore you decided to get better at it?
I don't think that was his purpose. I think it was something where he had I wasn't going to get into this huge long story, but Times Journal way back when was almost like the Cosmos is today. Times Journal, the Uxbridge Times Journal, was a very small newspaper. It wasn't owned by Metroland. It was owned, when I was remembering the Times Journal, it was owned by Harry Stemp, but I'm pretty sure it's got a longer legacy than that. But I remember they had a column that used to be written for the high school. It was called The Tiger's Eye. And Ryan Stemp actually wrote it for a while. And then when Ryan graduated, it was up for grabs. And I ended up going to Mr. Brandon and I said, I'd be willing to do this. And he said, you're not exactly the best at deadlines. And that was to me where it was just an exposure. And I just remember thinking, okay, well, that's something to keep in mind. And now every month we have to do a newsletter for Okami Kai, and it's done on the first of the month. And I will credit him as the reason as why it's done on the first of the month, because I need to make sure that I hit my deadline.
So you go to school, elementary school and high school, and you don't, even in university, you don't get to choose the teachers necessarily. Sometimes you get to, let's say, switch out of a class or switch into a class, but you don't have the luxury of really fine-tune choosing the people who you want to study with. And then you get to grow up. And if you're in the situation like you and I are with our music and our martial arts, then we're blessed to actually be able to go seek out those teachers that we really want to study from. When I went to university, I got to study with Joanne Bentley, who, what a great choice for me. And to this day remains a lifelong friend. And then I found Carol Fort. And then with martial arts, now you've sought out the people that you really want to train with.
Yep. And you and I have talked about this, especially over the pandemic. My first karate teacher, Fred Walker, there's still loads of times where I go, oh, that's what he meant when he said that. Or now I understand why he did things like that. And I guess with age comes wisdom, or as Robert Mustard, one of my favorite Aikido teachers, says, with old age comes treachery. So and that's a little different, but yeah.
What I love about Amy is her passion and her excitement. It just emanates from her in everything she does. And that's why I joke and I say she could teach underwater fire prevention and make it interesting. So the fact that she's a music teacher and it's so easy for me to relate to her just is so much fun for me. But she's just such a gem. She's an absolute incredible human being, and Uxbridge is so lucky to have her as a citizen here.
Yeah, but you know what? Listening to her talk and some of the stuff we did off mic and some of the stuff obviously made the episode, she's got a passion for teaching. And not only has she got a passion for it, but she's got a passion to do better. And I think out of all of the teachers that I have where I can say these were good teachers, they were the ones that did the extra research, that would go and try to figure out the best way that they could to present material. And that's why you're saying she could teach underwater fire prevention, because she's a teacher. And she's a good one.
And the best teachers never stop learning.
This last experience I've had with college, and yep, I've talked about some bad teachers that were in that program, but the really good ones were the ones that were putting in the effort and trying to be better, and they were paying attention to the students, and they were trying to have an interactive relationship with them. And that's what inspires me as a teacher. And so it was interesting. We're doing a podcast for this martial arts event that's coming up, Capital Conquest. And I talked to Adam Grogan, who's an incredible Taekwondo practitioner. He's into breaking. He's a world champion. And one of the things we asked him was, he said, what are you going to deliver in your class at Capital Conquest? And he says, I'm going to answer that by talking about the teachers that I really like. And they're the ones who are high energy. And they're the ones that maybe it's not necessarily their content, but that they inspire me to keep on training and motivate me. And I agree. I think that's something that if you've got a good teacher in your life, that's what they've done.
So thank you, Amy. Thank you for motivating us just to have that fire burn in us again as teachers, but also for what you bring to the community and what you bring to the students at Uxbridge Secondary School. Every student who has had the opportunity to study with you and to be in your class is all the better for it. So thank you so much for being who you are.
And speaking of passion for teaching, we did an interview with Kevin Douglas. He's the Uxbridge Hockey Academy founder, and he seems to have a big passion for hockey, enough that he's started up his own business with Uxbridge Hockey Academy. He sought us out. He said, do you mind if we get together and do an episode? And we said, absolutely. So that's our next episode that's coming out. Just putting the final touches on editing that. Until then, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, everybody. And if you haven't had a chance to meet Amy, seek her out, go see one of her performances, or put your kid in her class, even better.
But don't light anything on fire underwater.
Not underwater, no.
She's not trained yet. Thanks very much. This has been a Capsule Broadcasting production. We're thankful for everything that our teachers have taught us. We still haven't used trigonometry for anything, but we're still thankful.